I've had some interesting conversations where people get afraid because they go, oh, that self-care thing. Does that mean that my employees have to work a lot less or they're taking all this time off? And I'm like, no, you work hard.
And you're going to get an increased output.
I remember personally, too, when I used to be in a place where I'd make the excuse of like, I don't have time for self-care and all these sorts of things. We tell ourselves all sorts of things that aren't true. Even 60 seconds a day, you're starting to train your brain that, first of all, you're worthy. I think as an entrepreneur, we have so many things going on. Our brains are wired to achieve and do all these great things, which is great, but we neglect ourselves so many times.
There's a woman right now, and she's going through a very hard time.
Yeah.
And she's listening to this podcast,
Yeah.
and her body is screaming for help. How does she find that peaceful place?
Yeah. One of the things I always advocate for.
Who is Dr. Hammond before all of the titles and before all of the accolades?
When I think back to childhood, I would definitely say a girl who wanted to help people. I had a love for children, wanting to help children, wanting to do good things in the world. However, in that quest of just trying to do different things and try to achieve different things, I didn't really understand mental health back then. I didn't understand self-care. So I learned, unfortunately, from an early age, just to run yourself into the ground type of thing, like the next task, the next achievement, keep going, but have no time for yourself. So that's sort of my background where I started from before I started learning the tools to really think about how do I take care of myself on this journey.
So what was that spark? What was that thing that led you down this path to choose or to say that mental health is not an option? Mental health is essential.
Yes, such a great question. It took decades of my life for me to get to that point. And it was really the point where my son was around 3 or 4 years old and I hit burnout because I got to the point where I was trying to be super mom and super wife and super business owner and super community leader. And I did all these things and juggled so much, but I did not make the time for me. And I remember one of my favorite movies is actually Eat, Pray, Love. And I remember when Julia Roberts just had a moment, like in the middle of the night. I feel like she just had this moment. And I felt like I had that moment when my son was around 3 or 4. I remember it was in the middle of the night and I'm like, I was so exhausted and so tired. I literally prayed to God. I'm like, God, I need to start getting rest. Like I need to take care of myself. Like please help me to transition into a better lifestyle, right? For me, for my health. So it was literally at that moment where I started to say, okay, I have to make myself my number one priority and I have to make sure I'm prioritizing my mental health.
What do successful entrepreneurs misunderstand about burnout?
Ooh. We tend to gloss over. I think as an entrepreneur, we have so many things going on. Our brains are wired to achieve and do all these great things, which is great, but we neglect ourselves so many times because we think wrongly that it's only about business strategies, that it's only about attaining the next goal, which are important things, of course, in business. We want to move forward, but we tend to forget that if we do not take care of ourselves, we are going to end up in a place of physical or emotional burnout. It will come if you don't take care of yourself.
So like what are the early signs that burnout is on the horizon?
Yeah. So burnout, sometimes it takes a toll physically on us where we were just so exhausted. As I mentioned earlier, for me, I remember I was so tired. And sometimes as entrepreneurs, we ignore those signs. Your body will let you know, like you're fatigued, you're tired, you need to get rest. And or emotionally too, and mentally, you get to that place where you cannot concentrate. You're so shut down. You don't feel like doing work. Things that you used to enjoy just aren't enjoyable anymore. You're just at the place where you're like, I want to give up. This is too much.
So, but isn't it like by the time we get to that point, it's almost like too late?
Yes.
Like we're already in burnout mode. So like one of the things that I say is that our body in a weird way is designed to keep us alive.
Yes.
So the ultimate goal of the body is to keep you in a state of homeostasis.
Mm-hmm.
So much so that like when you see people, getting strokes, getting heart attacks, it almost seems like it comes out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I almost feel like burnout is the same way. It's just something that like creeps up on you. You didn't really know it or you didn't really like see it coming.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you can't do anymore.
Yeah.
You can't move anymore.
Yeah.
You can't give anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because we didn't put the preventative practices into place. We didn't put the rest into place. We didn't understand that, yes, productivity is important, but so is your health. And you build those things, right? Like over time, like having better self-care practices, for example, can work on preventing things like burnout. So we don't have to get to that point where it's like we're so exhausted, we're so burnt out. Now we can't do our work. Now we can't show up for our families. Like let's not get to that point, but instead work on ourselves to keep ourselves healthy, to keep ourselves emotionally healthy and physically healthy and spiritually and emotionally healthy.
Are you finding that women more so are having this challenge of balancing and dealing with mental health more so than men? Or are you finding that we display burnout in different ways?
Yeah, definitely display burnout in different ways. Women, though, with a lot of times in society, we're expected to do so much. It's almost this expectation that we have to take care of everyone else and neglect ourselves. Like that's the role. Like that's what you do. You be the, maybe if you're a mom, or you be the business owner, or you be the significant other, or whomever you are, you take care of everyone else and then you're last. But that really, my hope is that shifts for us in society, where we understand, especially as women, that you have to make yourself your number one priority. And it doesn't mean that you're selfish. Instead, it means that you are working on showing up powerfully for yourself, and for the people around you, because this affects people around you too. Because if we live in a state of fight or flight all the time, it will take a physical and emotional, mental toll on you. Your body, like you said earlier, we're not meant to be in a state of fight or flight. The anxiety, the revved up, like, what's the next thing? What do I have to do? Who do I have to take care of? Like, our bodies are not meant to constantly be in that state. There's a lot of research actually that shows that it is linked to stroke and diabetes and high blood pressure and heart conditions and all these other physical aspects. And on the mental health side, the depression, the anxiety, and all these other mental health conditions too, when we live in that state, which is why it's important that we work on taking care of ourselves and bringing our physical body back to a calmer place.
If you're enjoying this interview and want to get your mind right, join our Win Big Bids community. We have a mindset toolbox where we meet live to discuss a variety of topics weighing down on entrepreneurs. Because most people are not serious about their entrepreneurial journey, and sometimes you can feel quite alone in this endeavor. The community is built to help entrepreneurs like you thrive. Plus, the community is free to try. There's no commitment necessary. And with that, we'll continue on into the interview. Let me ask you this question.
Yeah.
Do you feel as if the feminist movement has played a role in the stress that women, play? Because, once upon a time, women, it was almost like presumed that you would be at home with the children.
Yeah.
It wasn't necessarily understood that you would have to work.
Yeah.
And then turn around and come home.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you come home, you're taking care of the household.
Yeah.
You're taking care of the children. You're taking care of the husband, the husband, your parents.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
Yes.
So, what are, in essence, like the coping mechanisms that women can use to help them like overcome? Because like there's a woman right now and she's going through a very hard time.
Yeah.
And she's listening to this podcast
Yeah.
and her body is screaming for help.
Mm-hmm.
How does she find that peaceful place?
Yeah. One of the things I always advocate for is taking a minute a day, because I remember personally too, when I used to be in a place where I'd make the excuse of like, I don't have time for self-care and all these sorts of things. We tell ourselves all sorts of things that aren't true. But if you can commit to 60 seconds, like you can even time yourself with a cell phone, a minimum of 60 seconds a day, just to take some deep breaths or take a walk outside, or I love my cups of tea, like if it's tea, like whatever it is for you to get your mind and body back into a calm place. Because when you start to do that, even 60 seconds a day, you're starting to train your brain that, first of all, you're worthy of that. You're allowed to have that time. Your body will appreciate you too for starting to have that time. And it's not something that takes a lot of time, but it does take, the first step is to commit to that practice, to making sure you're taking care of yourself. I've had some interesting conversations where people get afraid because they go, oh, that self-care thing, does that mean that my employees have to work a lot less, or they're taking all this time off? And I'm like, no, you work hard.
And you're going to get increased output.
I remember personally too, when I used to be in a place where I'd make the excuse of like, I don't have time for self-care and all these sorts of things. We tell ourselves all sorts of things that aren't true. Even 60 seconds a day, you're starting to train.
What is are there any specific impacts on different groups, like within the United States, like for instance, among Black people, among, are there any additional like noted mental health issues associated specifically in Black culture?
Oh, for sure. Like racial trauma, for example, like especially 2020 with the murder of George Floyd, like the amount, and still today, but there were the amount of images that came out, the amount of videos that came out, like the racial trauma that exists from things that have happened hundreds of years ago, things that continue to happen today, with racism and discrimination and prejudice, like all of these things on top of our personal lives really affect the Black community in more unique ways, which people don't often realize. So that impacts people in the workplace, that impacts people at home, it impacts people right in the community. But one of the things I am grateful for is we are starting to have more conversations about mental health, about how we can change these sorts of things. We can't change the past, obviously, but how we can work on taking care of ourselves and work on reducing the stigma of mental health, especially in Black and brown communities.
There's something I was watching the other day, and it was really talking about how even down to like our molecular levels, like down to our DNA, like it's like the switch for us within the Black community is like automatically turned in the on position. And so things that, let's say, other cultural groups or other ethnic groups can do, we cannot do. So what it takes for us to, in essence, minimize stroke, heart attack, diabetes, it's almost like we have to live at a different standard, right? And I know a lot of people don't like to hear that in the medical community, right? Like there's this belief almost that we're all the same, and because we're all the same, there's no difference in, let's say, what maybe you need to eat or things that you need to do to make yourself, like for instance, we have a lot of melanin in our skin. And there's a recommendation that, we should be outside for maybe like, an hour a day or something like that. But to someone who is very melanated, right, that has darker pigments in their skin, we reflect that light. So in actuality, we're supposed to be outside like 3 times longer, right? And I could see like the innuendos and what, someone could say, right? Like you're outside, you're a house Negro, right? You get where I'm going, right? But, ultimately the needs are different. And I know that they're just starting to take note of this out in the medical field. But I don't think it's something that's being pulled all the way through. Like the connections with vitamin D, for instance, and the levels of serotonin in our bodies. And I think that plays out in, Black America, mental illness and the like if we just had, therapy where we're outside more often than not.
Real thing.
And some of the things that I've wondered about, I don't know if you would know anything about this, but like, even like, should we be using sunscreen? Should we not? You see where I'm going? Because it's like, do we need that? Do we burn? Do we, you get what I mean? So, there's a lot of misnomers or misinformation out there, but all of these things tie in. The body is a whole being. It's a whole thing. So
in Harvard, actually, they've done a lot of studies on epigenetics, which is what you were saying before, where like trauma is literally stored in not just stored in your body, but also in your DNA. So again, when you're talking about generational trauma, decades and decades and hundreds of years, like physically in your body, in your DNA, what tends to happen, like you said, is it's even more important in communities of heavy, heavy trauma to work through that, doing the inner work, because now you physically have it in your body and emotionally and mentally you're dealing with that per se as well. But you can work on getting through, and you can put the practices into place to combat some of those things as far as your mental health.
So you've become a media voice for mental illness. How do you balance advocacy with boundaries?
Ooh, that's such a great question. I've learned to do that with time. I'm going to be very transparent and honest. Because I am passionate about the work I do. I do advocate. I do sort of have an open door policy when people need help of, from many places. However, I have put boundaries into place to make sure that my values are also noted, like family time, like my own personal time, maybe not immediately getting back to someone if it's not a true emergency, things like that. I've had to do that over time because otherwise, especially in the helping profession sometimes, and I think as an entrepreneur juggling multiple different things, it's easy for people to constantly need you for some things, but it's important for all of us to make sure we put boundaries into place as well to make sure we're protecting ourselves and our sanity as well.
So I'll ask you a quick question here.
Yeah.
Do you believe in, there's a struggle, right? It's a struggle of, does balance really exist in that way?
Yes.
Right? Because even when I look in nature, like
Yes.
there's different seasons.
Exactly.
Right? And some seasons are a little bit more mellow, and then some seasons are a little bit more harsh.
Yes.
And it all plays into just how we manage. Like some people believe in hustle culture, some believe in flow culture. Right? So, my question to you ultimately is when we're talking about hustle versus flow.
Yeah.
Do you believe that it is a mindset?
Yes, for sure. And I do believe balance exists. So that's a question I've gotten very often. I do believe it exists. However, it doesn't look the same for us, right? So, I mean, your version of balance might be different from mine, and that's okay. But it is important that you're taking care of your physical, mental, emotional, spiritual health. Like those things are important. So I do also believe, just like you said, in seasons, different seasons, because sometimes we just do as entrepreneurs have to go hard, spend a lot of time on certain tasks or certain activities, but also are you taking the time, again, a minimum of 60 seconds a day even, to say, okay, let me pause, let me get out of this fight or flight mode that's not healthy for you to be in all the time, and make sure that you're taking care of yourself and checking in with yourself. Like, are you also doing those things? Because the reality is productivity is great, and like it's an and conversation. It's not an or. So a lot of organizations and corporations I've talked with, I've had some interesting conversations where people get afraid because they go, oh, that self-care thing. Does that mean that my employees have to work a lot less, or they're taking all this time off? And I'm like, no, it means you work hard.
You're going to get increased outputs.
Yes. And you take care of yourself. Like this is an and conversation, not an or. So it's really important that, again, yes, hustle hard and have your self-care in place.
Incredible. When it's all said and done, what do you want your legacy to be? Not just on the psychology front, but in leadership.
I would say I really feel as a leader, it's important, not just for our own personal goals and moving forward, but also making sure we're looking back and helping others along the way too. So I hope my legacy will be, yes, she got the accolades, moved forward and built different things, and she helped a lot of people along the way too, because I think that's extremely important to make sure we're giving back, and it's good for your mental health as an aside. But the giving back part is really, really important to me, that people understand how important that is to help others along your journey.
Incredible. I want to thank you so much for coming out on our platform and just sharing this, because I think a lot of people that are listening in, they're desperate for an answer.
Yes.
And they're desperate for help. They're desperate for a calling. Just in terms of, I know you do a lot of advocacy, you're working in policy making around this topic of mental health. Where would you advise, or what services do you offer? Where can people reach out to you to learn more about how to deal with mental health, how to balance their day-to-day struggles, right? Or maybe any maybe we could even put, a link down in the description box just to provide them with some information about, sometimes people need a checklist. Like for me, I'm very much so a checklist type of person.
Yeah.
Where it's just like, I just need to, whatever the woosah is,
Yeah.
I need the instructions on how to learn to do the woosah thing.
Yeah.
So where can people meet you? Where can they learn more about you?
Yeah. The easiest place is on my website. It's drnekeshiahammond.com. I have toolkits on there, like you said, about burnout, kind of the checklist, like you said, is on there. I have an event coming up. I'm on constantly on social media.
Yes.
Because I do love the field of mental health and advocacy, and reminding people that we all need to work on staying uplifted and inspired, because it's just hard. Like we all have hard, dark seasons and all the things. So I'm constantly putting some motivational things out there on social as well. So yeah, that's the best way for people.
Thank you so much for coming out today.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure.